You know, the very definition of war is changing right before our eyes. The recent conflict in South Lebanon, it's not just another headline. It's really a preview of what 21st century combat looks like. A world where an unconventional, tech-savvy force can go toe-to-toe with a military superpower and completely rewrite the rules of the game. Okay, let's just jump right in with this quote. I mean, think about those numbers. This isn't just a statistic, it's a story of a massive military upset. The IDF, with all its advanced technology, went in expecting this to be a quick, decisive campaign. Instead, they got hit with this relentless, brutal, and frankly, brilliant strategy that just shattered all their assumptions. The shockwaves from this one, they were felt all over the world. This wasn't just a battle. It was a masterclass in a new kind of warfare. So, how in the world did this happen? Well, this was no accident. This was a calculated, strategic move by Hezbollah. Their goal? To drag Israel into a two-front war it just wasn't ready for. By opening up a second front in the north, Hezbollah didn't just show off its muscle. It forced Israel to split its forces, its attention, its resources. And that move, right there, fundamentally changed the entire game. And this is where it gets really fascinating, because you're looking at a major clash of military thinking. The IDF showed up ready for a conventional fight, the kind of thing you see on the left. Overwhelming air power, columns of tanks, a single centralized command calling all the shots. But what they walked into was something else entirely, something from the column on the right. With a lot of help from Iran, Hezbollah had spent years, literal years, building this decentralized underground fortress. It was designed from the ground up to counter Israel's biggest strengths and hit all of its weakest points. That right there is the very definition of asymmetric warfare. You use unconventional tactics to fight a much stronger enemy, and you level the playing field. So let's break down how they actually did it, because this wasn't some random guerrilla fight. It was meticulously planned. Those deep tunnel networks, think of them like an underground subway system for fighters, letting them pop up, launch an attack, and just vanish. The decentralized command meant there was no single head of the snake to cut off. And the weapons? My goodness, we're talking cheap but incredibly deadly FPV drones. That stands for first-person view, and these devastating Cornet anti-tank missiles. They use them with surgical precision to just bleed the Israeli armored divisions dry, making them pay in blood for every single inch of ground they took. Now, we have to talk about the psychological side of this. For Israel, the Merkava tank isn't just a machine. It's a national icon. It represents their technological edge, their military might, their promise to protect their soldiers above all else. So when videos of these tanks, these chariots of fire, started going viral, just burning in the fields, the impact was immense. It wasn't just about losing equipment. It was about watching a core national myth get shattered in real time. It's a brutal reminder that in modern war, the fight for the narrative is just as important as the fight on the ground. The pressure was just relentless. Look at this number, 2,184. That's how many separate operations Hezbollah launched in only 45 days. That breaks down to more than 48 attacks every single day. Can you just imagine the psychological strain of that? This constant grinding pressure. There were no safe zones, no breaks. The IDF was always reacting, always on the defensive, never able to seize the initiative. And this number, this one is just as shocking. 188. That's how many Israeli tanks and armored vehicles Hezbollah claimed to have hit. Now look, you always have to be skeptical of claims made in the heat of battle, but the sheer amount of video evidence and analysis from independent sources, it all points to the fact that the IDF took heavy material losses. These weren't just stats on a report. This was a key reason a ceasefire eventually happened. Israel just couldn't keep taking those kinds of hits. The fallout from the fighting didn't stop at the border, not by a long shot. It sent tremors across the entire region. All that instability created a kind of power vacuum. You better believe other countries moved in fast to take advantage of the new economic and political situation. This conflict really just hit the accelerator on a major reshuffling of the whole geopolitical chessboard. And this is where the long game really kicks in. So you've got the Strait of Hormuz suddenly looking very risky, and Israel's big energy plans are on shaky ground. Well, Egypt saw golden opportunity, and they jumped on it. They blocked competing projects and used their massive port infrastructure to position themselves as the new, reliable energy hub for the entire region. They just signed a massive deal with the UAE to turn Egyptian ports into a kind of central fuel bank. And on top of that, they locked in a long-term gas deal with Cyprus. It's a brilliant move that makes them the safest bet for energy in the Middle East right now. All of this is causing new and honestly pretty surprising alliances to form. We're basically seeing two competing teams emerge. In one corner, you've got the UAE Israel, the US, and India getting closer on things like security and tech. And in the other corner, a powerful new group is taking shape. Saudi Arabia, nuclear-armed Pakistan, Turkey, and Egypt. They're all calling for a completely new security setup in the region. The old lines in the sand that have defined the Middle East for decades? Yeah, they're being totally redrawn. All right, let's zoom out and look at the global picture for a second, because this regional fight had huge consequences for the United States. It didn't just push their military readiness to the absolute limit, it also revealed this really dangerous gap between the political talk in Washington and the military reality on the ground. The numbers here are, well, they're breathtaking. In just 38 days of fighting, the U.S. absolutely burned through its high-end missile stockpiles. We're talking half, 50% of all its THAAD and Patriot interceptors, gone. And since it takes years, not months, to build more of these things, this single conflict has set back America's military readiness by at least 5 years. That is a massive strategic problem, and you can be sure there are a lot of worried people in the Pentagon right now. So this was the official story coming from the White House, a very clear, very decisive message, right? We won. Iran's military is in ruins. Their ability to make weapons is gone. It's a classic political victory lap designed to project strength and control the story, especially with an election coming up. But then the real report came out. The Defense Intelligence Agency is legally required to give its assessment to Congress. And boy, was it different. This slide just perfectly captures the huge disconnect between the political spin and the military's own analysis. The DIA basically said, hold on, Iran's capabilities were hurt, sure, but destroyed? Not even close. They still have thousands of missiles. 2/3 of their air force is still flying. 60% of their navy is still operational. The reality was a world away from the victory party being thrown at the White House. You know, away from the battlefield of drones and missiles, there was another war being fought, a much quieter one. A war over words, over definitions. And one of the key weapons in that war is this, the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. Its real power is in how vague it can be, especially a clause that can be used to say that certain kinds of deep criticism of the state of Israel are, by definition, anti-Semitic. And here is a perfect example of how that plays out in the real world. In the UK, this definition was used over and over again as a political weapon against the Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn. By blurring the line between criticizing Israeli government policy and actual anti-Semitism, his entire history as a lifelong anti-racist was turned upside down. It created this absolute political firestorm that confused his supporters, split his party, and in the end was a major factor in his downfall. It turned out to be an incredibly powerful tool for shutting down dissent. Which really brings us to this final, huge question. This conflict showed us that a modern battlefield isn't just one place. It's fought with kamikaze drones in the dirt, with multi-billion-dollar energy deals in boardrooms, and with the weaponization of language in the court of public opinion. In this new world, holding a piece of land is only part of the story. The real question is who controls the narrative. Because in a world where perception can become reality, that might be the only thing that truly matters.